I'd like to call this meeting of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors to order. First, we have citizen comments. Do we have any citizen comments, Sean?
Yeah, but we have no citizen comments this month.
All right. Moving on, remarks from the members of the Johnson County Library Board. Do any of the members have anything they'd like to say? I guess that's no. All right, as for me, one thing about the closed captioning, we have an update on that. While a Facebook live stream is currently the most efficient way to broadcast our board meetings to the public, we recognize that it does not offer a real-time closed captioning option for viewers who are hearing impaired. We are testing a new closed captioning solution this month that we hope will make our meetings more accessible. Please click on the CAP app link in the chat to open up a live transcript of the meeting. To view the meeting and read the transcript simultaneously, arrange the windows side by side on your screen. As is our standard practice, the library will also upload video of the board meeting to YouTube with closed captions available. Anybody have any questions on that? All right, next, the Personnel Review Committee for the County Librarians Appraisal. Every year about this time, we form a committee to do Sean's annual review. Last year, it was Brandy, Donna, and myself. So I'm not going to be on it. So Brandy and Donna, and I need one more board member to volunteer to be on that. And I have all the folders from the past 5 years available to pass on to whoever needs them. So any volunteers? David? Anybody?
Amy, I'll volunteer.
Okay. And Brandy, I'd like, could you head up the committee? Brandy?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
Okay, I'll get these somehow. Thank you for doing that. Next, we have the Friends of the Library written report presented by Jennifer Curtis. Is Jennifer here, or are we just going to look on what she submitted?
I am here, actually. I'm sorry, I was just trying to get my video going. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, Commissioner Hanslick and Mr. Casserly, for this opportunity to report on the Friends' progress during the last 30 days. I'm Jennifer Curtis, President of the Friends Board, reporting today on behalf of the Executive Committee. The 3 subjects in my report today are to give you an update on the Friends Bookstore's reopen launch, the status of our PPP loan and the potential Forgiveness Act, and then the ever enjoyable internet sales factoids. So we're happy to report all 3 bookstores opened Thursday, July 9, and have been open for a total of 7 days in July. Appointments are required, yet as long as volunteers are available, we have been permitting walk-in shoppers. Sales at Blue Valley Bookstore have been consistent. Antioch has been fully volunteer staffed as well, and walk-in traffic has been okay. At Central, many of the volunteers have opted out of returning, and during the month of August, we'll continue walk-in traffic at Antioch and Blue Valley, as well as individual appointments at all 3 locations. And we have been considering a clearance sale at Central before closing day. I want to give a big thank you to volunteer coordinator Amber Burke-Slater and the library facilities team. They arranged for acrylic barriers and tables in front of the counters for the safety of cashiers and customers. However, the Friends are responsible for our own hand sanitizer, disinfectant, and gloves to provide more safety and security, and we continue to track down supplies for those. The Friends did qualify for the PPP loan. We received approximately $20,000, and those funds have been expended according to the established protocol. The Paycheck Protection Small Business Forgiveness Act is being considered by Congress, and if passed, PPP loans of $150,000 or less can be fully forgiven by completing and submitting a one-page certification to the lender. So if this Forgiveness Act is passed, the Friends lender will incorporate this new certification into its online forgiveness platform, And this process has been managed in total by the Friends Operation Manager and our Board Treasurer. We are very thankful for that. All right, and most excitingly, our internet sales factoids. We are happy to be having continued success with internet sales. We did do some international shipping to Australia and India. And as you can see, the sales of note was a World Book Encyclopedia 2018 set for just under $300. War and Remembrance DVD set for $231, and a History of the 489th Bomb Group, $165. So we are happy to continue with internet sales factoids and our internet sales. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you for the opportunity.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have our Johnson County Library Foundation report by Stephanie Stolzheimer.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Amy and everybody. I'm delighted to report on behalf of the foundation. The first thing I want to touch on are grants. And the library recently received a grant from the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation for $100,000. That is always good news. They made a 2-year commitment to the Race Project KC and for about $60,000. And they made about a 1-year commitment to the new online programming initiative for $40,000. We also have a planned gift that came to the foundation recently, and I want to elaborate just a little bit on it. It was for $167,000. And I can talk about it because it's from a donor named Warren Robinson. And some of you may know him, and I know that Fred Logan knows Warren Robinson. I had the pleasure of talking with his wife, Betty, and she told me some wonderful stories. Mr. Robinson started volunteering with the Johnson County Library in 1969. He worked with the Friends, and he did a lot of the book sales. He co-chaired the bond campaign for the Central Resource Library, and he became a founding member of the foundation. So, remarkable guy. And the foundation board leadership looks forward to putting his bequest to something that's very meaningful. So we're very grateful for that. I also want to talk about Library Lets Loose. It's September 12th. The invitations dropped this week, so everybody should be receiving an invitation soon. I tell you what, this is going to be very cool. I didn't see it coming really, but it's going to be really great. I hope everybody joins in and joins us for, you just link on a link. You guys, I'll send it to you so you make sure you can join and get all the information pre-event, and then you have the link during the event. We're using the online platform that the Kaufman Foundation has funded. And so that's kind of cool that the online platform will actually dovetail with Library Lets Loose, and it's going to just be really a fun night. We have a lot of live segments, some pre-recorded segments, and we'll end up with a dance party. We have the sponsor recruitment continues, and I have to thank all of the sponsors. We have 42 sponsors, which is amazing. Last year we had 44 sponsors. So the sponsor number is on track, and the dollars aren't as high, but oh my goodness, having the sponsors come to the table is really remarkable. We could not do this event without the sponsors. And I'm going to say a few sponsors are joining us today. And so I can't help but do a little shout out to Fred and Amy and Rick and the Friends of the Library. And there are 38 other sponsors who are making this happen. I don't know that I have a whole lot more. We have produced an 8-part video series that promotes the library and the event. These celebrity guests are doing readings and we're just thrilled to have them. And I'll just name the names because they're sort of fun to say. Candace Millard, Steve Kraske, Will and Senya Shields, Nate Bucati, Gary Lezak, Fire Chief Tony Lopez, Angelo Cervantes, and Ben Bliss. They're all doing, they've all selected a book that they loved, and they're reading a little segment. We're using it on social media heavily, and it'll also be part of the event online, so you can see it. That's about it. Any questions about this? Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm looking forward to it.
I know it's going to be fun.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah. Really
I
fun,
guess,
really fun.
I guess there won't be any macaroons this year, huh?
Only if you make them.
No, that's true.
BYO macaroon.
All right. Next, we have our Board of County Commissioners Liaison, Janae Hanslick.
Yes, so Commissioner Hanslick contacted me yesterday, and I think this may be true also for Assistant County Manager Joe Waters. They had a very an unexpected long portion of public comment this morning, and then they were scheduled to go to the election office for a tour of the entire commission at 4 o'clock today. She said that she would try and get to this meeting, as did Joe, but if they can't, she asked me to extend her apologies. It was just something that they couldn't move with, working with all the commissioners' schedules. So, and we can cover some of the things that she might have covered, but I did not ask her. I forgot to ask her what book she was reading, which I think is, for all of us, is really, we're always interested in what she's reading.
And what are you reading, Sean? You can tell us.
Oh yeah, I am reading, what am I reading? Oh, I'm reading The Goldfinch. I'm about halfway through, and just a beautifully written book. And on my book club, we're still working through the spirit level, looking at different types of issues on inequality as part of the executive leadership team. It's something that we pick a book and then read it together. So those are the two books I'm reading.
Oh, good. All right. If she comes in, let me know, and we can always let her do her report.
Certainly.
Okay, moving on, we have Board Counsel Fred Logan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to talk about two different issues. I'm going to start by talking about performance copyright, fair use, and digital rights management. Fair use doctrine applies to libraries with respect to copyright. It's what allows libraries to provide information and books to patrons, and it extends to electronic media as well, including performances on electronic media. There are 4 factors that come into play on fair use. The purpose and character of the use, whether it's for commercial purposes, and obviously the library, that never applies, or for nonprofit educational purposes, and that does apply to libraries. The nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion of the work that's used, and then the effect on the market. What I need to say here, though, is that we've never had a serious allegation of a copyright violation made against the library, and allegations against libraries nationwide, in my view, are relatively rare. Libraries stand under copyright law in a bit of a special position. Now they are favored, but they are not immune. So I think library staff is very careful. They pose questions to us if they have a question about a particular item, whether the fair use doctrine applies, and then we offer an opinion on that. But I think from the library board's perspective, you should know that staff very carefully follows copyright issues. They're in the early 2000s. Congress adopted the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which dealt with digital issues. And so there are some digital platforms that are limited, and in those instances, under the law, that the library makes no use of those. But if they're out there and they're available, the library may make use. And in our view, under the 4 factors, libraries are in a very favorable position, but I want to say they're not in an immune position. So we are careful about that. The second issue that I was asked to say something about was the mask wearing requirements that were put into effect by the governor, and then the response in the library. The response, in my view, has been overwhelmingly positive. The governor's order on masks was issued in early July, and basically the order said that as of July 3, 2020, any person in Kansas shall cover their mouth and nose with a mask or other face covering when they are in the following situations. A, inside or in line to enter any public indoor space. Well, the library obviously falls into that category. And then there's also an order with respect to requiring employees to wear masks. I can report that we've heard, as council, we've heard virtually nothing about this. It isn't to say that there isn't an occasional interplay with a patron who doesn't want to wear a mask, but I think it's safe to say that literally thousands and thousands of patrons have come in since July 3 and have worn masks, and it's been very smooth in my opinion. One thing I want to stress, and I've said this at the last board meeting, it's a civil order. It's not a criminal order. So when somebody comes in and doesn't wear a mask, what the library says is, look, you're required to wear a mask, and overwhelmingly people respond. But it's not a criminal violation. It's a civil violation. But that would be sufficient grounds to say, well, you'll have to leave the library. In essence, it's kind of like a very limited suspension of library privileges within a facility. But I don't want to overstate that, because it's not as if we've been getting calls on it. People are wearing masks in the libraries, and the governor's order is in effect until September 15th. So I think that's a pretty good overview of that. Any questions?
Yeah, Fred, I got a quick question. This is David Sims.
Yep.
Can we, let's say the county and the state doesn't have a mandatory mask order, can we keep it on ours, or whether we want to or not, it's a different issue, but can we legally?
Well, I think, when we did this before, it was pretty clearly an emergency situation. I think it becomes much more difficult for the library to act unilaterally if there's no order entered by the governor and no similar order entered by the county commission. It's harder to argue that there's an emergency situation. So I don't want to prejudge it too much, but I would say it would probably be very difficult under those circumstances for the library to enter a unilateral order requiring masks. However, given the compliance from patrons, I suspect that if patrons are asked to put on a mask, I suspect that we're going to get very good compliance on that after September 15th. But the governor may try to enter some other kind of order at that time. It's hard to know. Is that a good answer? Or does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers it perfectly. So, I mean, because some people want to, why, at the beginning, why aren't we doing it mandatory? And it kind of comes down to, we're not going to do it mandatory until, and we would have trouble enforcing it if it wasn't a county or state issue anyway.
Well,
So our kind of heads up some of that criticism.
That's right. And our initial order was unilateral, but ended up being praised by the chairman of the commission, and it was in a very different setting. There was a state emergency order, but if you ask the question, if there are literally no emergency orders out there, then I think it's harder for the library to do that.
Thank you.
Fred, I have another question. Could you step the board through what's special about the September 15th date, and why the governor may or may not make a statement on that date?
Well, she issued executive order number 2052 in early July, and the order by its terms was set to expire, I believe, on Well, I'm not seeing it here, but I believe it's in September. And the legislature has made some changes to her emergency authority. And so it would not be, arguably, it might not be as easy for her to enter an emergency order at that time. I don't want to prejudge it because all of this is so new, but that is when the order expires. I'm pretty sure. I'm not finding it here immediately in the order, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I think that's true. I think the legislature, the House became involved with it and maybe challenged her executive authority to make this, and I think those expire on the 15th. I just kind of, what Fred and I are just telling the board is that's why things are changing, and why these dates are happening, and that the governor and the state and even local are revisiting it at a high frequency, because there's still lots of things still in motion. And so I think as a board and, as part of the administrative team, we have to be aware that, that things may change September 15th. The other piece that I kind of want to talk about is the Department of Health and Environment, to you, David. If the Department of Health and Environment says, not wearing masks is mandatory in the county, per their recommendation, it's very hard for the library to then say that you would have to wear one. We may be able to do it, but we would be operating outside of the state, the commission, and our local Department of Health and Environment. And those are the experts. And so we have, since we've gone through the initial, from the initial state of emergency when I issued closing, we have followed closely the state and the county and the local Department of Health and followed their recommendations. So if we were to close or do anything else, it would be on their instructions.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fred, it's Fabian Shepherd.
Hi, Fabian.
Hey, can you explain why we were covering the fair use? Did something occur?
No, I think that staff and, what staff does is they will talk about, I think, because we don't come up with the ideas for board council report. I learn about it when I get the agenda, and these are issues where I think the board feels that it's appropriate for us to brief you on things that may come to us. But I don't think there's any particular issue that triggered this. I think that, it's been a long time since we've talked about copyright fair use. And I'm not sure that I've ever made a presentation on digital rights management. So I think that's what it amounts to, Fabian.
Thank you very much. I didn't know if it was something having to do with the internet, because I know my family has really appreciated the online story time and the readings that are going on regularly, especially with the kids being stuck at home during this time. It has been just fantastic for us.
And you know what? I mean, that may have very well triggered this request that as board counsel, I talk about the legal background for that, because libraries really do have a special protection under copyright fair use doctrine. Now, again, I want to stress it's not absolute, but it's a special status. There's no question about it.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and absolutely, Fabian. That's exactly why, because a lot of the publishing houses dropped their copyright to allow libraries when we were initially doing this, and this has got to do with performance of works, say readings of Dr. Seuss and other books. And so they dropped that, and then I think reinstituting those copyright rules back as we go forward. So stories that we may have been able to read, we may not be able to read again in the future because of copyright. And we're thinking it was really wonderful that the publishing industry did this to help libraries out and offer services, but it's not forever. And I thought it might be just good to understand how copyright works and digital rights management, DRM, how that works also as we go forward.
With Sean, Fabian Shepherd again, and you know, in my former life, I was in entertainment, and I don't know as much as Fred does, obviously, about this, but one thing I do know is parody is protected. So if we do every story as a parody, then I think we're good.
Yeah, you're right. That parody is protected. That is correct.
Any more questions for Fred? All right, thank you, Fred.
Mhm.
And next is Dave Ratney, the Finance Director, to go over our finances and statistics.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm going to direct you to page 9, and we're looking at our June reports. And as you can see, we're 50% way through the year here. Things are looking still pretty good from a revenue standpoint. We're seeing some areas in the ad valorem delinquent and motor vehicle that we were early on certain that they were going to be probably coming short on. So those aren't really surprises. The good news is our ad valorem's about where it should be. And then we're seeing some revenue issues as it relates to the overdues, fees, and copy printing. And that's mainly due to us having been closed for several months and activity not, even with us being reopened, being as robust as it was pre-COVID. So overall, though, I think we're in pretty good shape from a revenue standpoint. And then if you scroll a little bit further down, you'll see the expenditures make up for those areas where maybe the revenues aren't as good. And we're seeing some of the savings coming by way of the salary benefits. Again, we have a number of vacancies, and then along with that, we're reaping dividends from having furloughed some positions. So that's where you're seeing savings that are going to more than make up for any revenue shorts that we should have. So the overall revenue expense picture looks very favorable for us. Looks very good. So any questions on how we're doing financially for 2020? Okay. And then I think the other thing that I know Sean and I were, I think, going to talk about, and he alluded to a little earlier, was just how we're doing from a county budget process standpoint. Sean and I had the pleasure of spending a few mornings out in Olathe back in July and presented our library budget proposal for 2021 to the Board of County Commissioners. The good news is they didn't seem to have any issues, I think, with what we're proposing for 2021, and seemed very favorable to what we had brought forward. The questions mainly centered around just some of our out-year placement of projects, in particular, kind of where Blue Valley is on our projected timeline, and also the Corinth replacement projects. So there was some conversation. There are a few board members that have some opinions on those projects and whether we do one in front of the other and what those might look like. I'm sure Sean will want to weigh in and give his perspective on that as well. But yeah, I thought that the main focus while we were out there was just more about where some of our out-year projects are, and it probably would do us some good to have a future retreat, maybe with the Board of County Commissioners, just to kind of discuss that at some future point in time. So, Sean, do you want to add to that?
No, yes, I think that's a really good summary. With the budget the board had no questions with the capital projects they did.
Yeah.
And so they asked me to convey that some of them had the opinion that they felt that the Blue Valley project should go behind Corinth, and talked about really encouraged us to work with the city of Prairie Village. We kind of shared with them that we'd worked really collaboratively with them, but because of COVID and the economic impact, that was at a bit of a standstill. We did share with them that the library board does meet annually and review the priorities. But we also shared them that Blue Valley is the busiest library, and perhaps that's where the greatest need for the community is at this point. But they asked me to convey their thoughts, or some of them did. They didn't take a motion on it or set an opinion. They just shared some of their thoughts. They also questioned what our proposal at Blue Valley to build a new 2-story building. We shared with them that we'd looked at all the options, a 60,000 square foot building that went along one edge of the property, an extension or an addition to the existing building, or actually building on the front. When we talked that to the Overland Park Development Committee, and they looked at this, and then took it out to the community was really in favor of putting that placement at a new location that would involve demoing of the existing building. Cost-wise, they're about the same, but the existing building presents some unique challenges in putting an addition, particularly for flow of the building design and HVAC, and in many ways, we would involve gutting many of the interiors of that building in order to make an addition happen. We would have certain challenges also with roof lines. It's problematic. But they asked me to convey that and their concerns. We did share with them that the majority, except the lot where the library sits, all the surrounding property is owned by the city of Overland Park, and that this partnership was very much about a building, but also about creating a park, land, or a literary park for people to occupy, and those two things would create a kind of a single campus. And they took that under advisement. They asked us for an update on Antioch, and we shared with them it was very much the same type of agreement where both as Lackman or Lenexa, where the city had provided land for the library to build on, and that Miriam was doing the same, and that project was going forward, and that met with a lot of encouragement and overall, I think, support. I think there were just a few questions, and again, I feel obliged to communicate their message to you as a library board. Any questions concerning that?
On Fabian Shepherd, I may have missed it or misheard it. Did you say that the board encouraged perhaps that Blue Valley should precede Corinth?
No, it's a good question. I'll clarify. That was maybe my fault. They were saying that Corinth should precede Blue Valley, and they asked me the order today, and Blue Valley precedes Corinth today on the plan per library board vote.
Thank you, Sean, because I thought that, yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Could we have Adam come up, Wathen, come up and talk to us next about the statistic report?
Yes, Adam Wathen. I'm the Associate Director for System-Wide Services at Johnson County Library. And I'll be talking to you about core operational statistics today, and then the 2019 statistical report for our branches, and a short report on reopening statistical trends. And I apologize that the agenda indicates I'll talk about incident reports as well. We've aligned those with our maintenance and facilities report, which I'll bring to you later this year. So we will cover incident reports, but just not today. This month in our core operational statistics, you'll see that they include dates up through June. And we reopened our 3 drive-throughs in May, and we opened our branches on June 15th. So these statistics represent the first reopening statistics after our COVID-19 closure. And you can see that reflected in our digital usage, which still has a very significant increase over previous years, even though it trended slightly down in June. It could be that people who were using our digital products while the libraries were closed returned to physical when we reopened. And in the next graph, you can see that our physical circulation did gain speed in June. And then you can see in our visitation, we also began to trend upward in June. And I'll have an update on some July statistics in a few minutes when we talk about reopening. And as I said, in July, we're focusing on trends in our branches. When I report on these trends, remember that we're looking at data from our last full year compared to previous years. So the data is from 2019. And even though that feels like eons ago, now, since we've been disrupted so significantly with COVID-19, these are the cumulative trends of 2019 and prior. So the first chart shows the circulation trend for the last 5 years. You can see that there's been a slight but steady decrease for most of our branches in physical circulation. Lackman closed in 2019 and was unavailable for a month as we transferred staff and materials to Lenexa City Center. And so you see a dip there as well. And we can see a dip in the Cedar Row data because it was also closed for over a month for a roofing project, if you remember. Monticello is represented and shows its first full year of circulation after opening in 2018. And the next chart shows our visitation, which similarly shows a slight drop or a fairly stable visitation for most of our branches. And you can see some of the same trend lines. On the next page, you will see the 3-year branch full-time equivalency compared with circulation and visitation. And this chart compares our staffing levels at the branches with the combined circulation and visitation levels of that branch. I added together the amount of circulation and visits each branch had and divided that by the number of staff FTE allocated to that branch. And so the line in the middle represents an average of that number. And that average accounts for, you can see on the left-hand side there, 35,000, and that is the number of circulation and visits per average FTE or per 40-hour employee. Branch lines above that average have less staff compared to the traffic than average, or they're dealing with more material and visits per employee. And branches below that average line have more staff compared to the visitation circulation traffic, so they're dealing with less circulation and visitation per full-time equivalent employee. And so you can see how Lackman in the middle there changed from being above the line, having fewer staff than average or handling more traffic in 2018 to below the line after 2019 when we hired all of those staff for Lenexa City Center Library, and now they have a higher FTE than average. The dramatic looking change at Spring Hill comes from having moved the management of Spring Hill branch from Blue Valley to Gardner. So the Gardner staff now cover the Spring Hill branch. And this change represents a change from 120 hours of labor to 65 hours of weekly labor. And so it's a very small change in terms of the number of staff applied to Spring Hill, but it looks significant on the chart because it is because we apply so few staff hours to Spring Hill. And so any change makes a dramatic shift in the data. And you can also see here with the yellow lines in 2019 that staffing changes brought most of our branches nearer to that average line from 2018 to 2019. For example, Blue Valley is closer to average in 2019 than in 2018, and so is Cedar Row. And you can see that in most of the branches there. We'll continue to look at data like this to see where we reallocate staffing and to see where we can match the labor with the needs of those branches. And then the final chart shows our active users per branch, which also has dropped slightly at many of the branches. Lenexa, Monticello, and Spring Hill are the exceptions on this chart. And if you have any questions about that data before I jump into the reopening usage, I'd be glad to answer them. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to reopening statistics. And there are 3 slides here that I'd like to show you. These slides are comparing the last 2 weeks of June when we were open and all of July from 2019 to the same weeks in 2020. And so we're seeing the difference between last year and this year for those 6 weeks of use. The first slide shows our checkouts. We've seen a 33% decrease in the number of individual users checking out materials. This is approximately our door count, although not everybody who comes through our door checks out materials, and you'll see that on the next slide. Hold on, Michaela, can you go back? Thank you. In the next chart, you'll see that we have a 32% decrease in the number of items checked out over the same period. And so those align pretty well. And then the next slide, you'll see our visitation trend. We've actually seen our in-person visits drop by 61% over last year for these 6 weeks. Summer is usually our busiest time with kids out of school, our summer reading programming, and a very active library. This summer is significantly different, of course. And it's worth noting here that in the last slide, we only saw a 33% decrease in the number of individual people checking out materials, but a 61% decrease in door count. The difference certainly includes people using our libraries for computers, in-person programming, meeting rooms, and Makerspace, and all of those other things that people use us for, other than checking out materials. So that shows that difference.
Adam, Bethany Griffith here.
Yeah.
What is our overall decrease in hours percentage that if we're seeing whatever it is, a 32% drop in checkouts and stuff, what is how many hours are we down compared to last year? Because that's a significant factor in less visits and less materials.
Sure, I think you're right. For example, we're closed on Fridays, and so that decreases the number of staff contacts. I can't remember the exact number, and I'm not sure if somebody on here knows it. I'd rather somebody say the exact number than, oh, good. I got a message from Jen Munkin that says we're at roughly 25% reduction in hours open to the public.
Hey,
and
Adam,
so yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Wayne
Dr.
Burke. Bethany, we're right on the same page. One of the things I was going to ask is not only the reduced hours, but how many, or did we take into account that there were branches that weren't open during this time period as well? Did we account for that?
Yeah, all of our branches have opened up during this time period because it only includes the 6 weeks since we actually opened our doors. Okay. And so this doesn't include the time where we just had our drive-throughs open. And so I'm really trying to compare apples to apples from last year to this year. And it's still hard, as Bethany noted, because it isn't apples to apples. We don't have the same number of hours.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I probably just missed it a little bit there.
Nope, that's great. This can get really messy and complex, yes.
Hey Adam, this is David Sims.
I do.
You know computer usage statistics? Is that, I assume it's down, but do you know how much it's down by?
I don't know how much that's down. I can certainly bring that in because I do have those statistics. I just haven't been reporting them recently, and so I can check on that and bring them next month.
Hey, Adam, Fabian Shepherd.
Hello.
I saw that David's still on there, and this is probably more a question for David, but in the statistics that we saw as far as staffing goes, I noticed Spring Hill, and we talked about Spring Hill, and I got to visit Gardner. I wanted to visit Spring Hill, but it was closed. And I noticed the rooftops when I went to Spring Hill. I don't go that way very often. And it's growing. We've got tons of houses, tons of families moving out there. So I would be anticipating that we're going to have more demand out in that area. Do we have a forward plan as far as staffing for those needs?
Yeah, we did look at the Comprehensive Library Master Plan, and we're following the guidelines of the Comprehensive Library Master Plan in terms of that. And so that's something that we can look again at when you're talking about priorities at the board, because we do review the Comprehensive Library Master Plan and the recommendations in that plan. We do have Spring Hill integrated into a study that we're going to do, which is called the Rural Renewal Initiative, which is a mouthful. And I anticipate that we'll have those discussions then. And we also look at data to match up the number of hours and demand at those libraries. We haven't seen a significant increase in demand at Spring Hill, even though all of that housing is going out at Spring Hill. And so before COVID, we would do tours for new employees, and I would drive that route between Blue Valley and Spring Hill and into Edgerton and this. And that's one of the storylines that I talked to about with staff is the growth and development in South Johnson County. And so it is on our radar, and we do look at that data in terms of use and have those conversations pretty regularly here about how to respond to use and when to respond to use. And Sean, I don't know if you want to add to that or if that's satisfactory.
Oh, that's a great, it's a great report, Adam. I think when we looked at the Blue Valley location, we reached out to the facilities department in the Blue Valley School District and talked to them about new schools and what their projections were. And I think as part of this rural renewal initiative, we'll be reaching out to the Spring Hill School District, looking at their growth rates and also the DeSoto School District, and go, as you're planning your facilities and your 10-year plan, what are you seeing? So anyone that's doing this kind of planning, we also work with the county for new residential building starts, and then we're looking at commercial building starts to understand what are we seeing as far as growth rates and doing some predictive looking back over the last 5 years. But we know the two areas in the county, 5 years ago that were growing the fastest was the Southeast and the Northwest. And I think that today that still is very much the case. So as we get into those rural renewal initiative study, we'll be reaching out to the school districts.
Sean, the RRI is slated for, is it the end of second quarter or third quarter? When we start?
Scott,
I don't remember.
I think it's the third quarter.
Hey guys, yeah. Right now we're looking at the rural renewal initiative study happening in Q4 of this year.
Okay, in Q4, so it will be after our next retreat.
That's where it is currently, right?
Okay. And why did that get pushed off? Because originally that was on the timeline for second quarter. Is this a COVID casualty?
This is definitely a COVID casualty. I think what we did is with COVID hit, we spent most of the issues scrambling to try and figure out how to put services online. But the big one that we were up against was the summer reading program and how to do that. So that's pushed us back. I think we're going to be able to play catch up on it, but yeah, there's just budget and the uncertainty of the budget involved. That admin was much more involved with looking at budgets. That was contraction of, I think one of the budgets we presented was a 10%, and then I think another one was a 25% budget reduction and how we would do that. So a lot of that work was unexpected, and we just reacted to it, and something had to get pushed.
Okay.
I did, we were going to talk about Spring Hill. I'm going to put my 2 cents worth in. Anytime you guys want to come talk to the school district, I know a guy, and I can make sure that you have a front row and center, and we can get you all the information. We're going to brag a little bit, but we've been the fastest growing school district in the state of Kansas last 2 years in a row. One of the things that we did talk about at the last retreat was our hours. And I guarantee you, if we can figure out a way to extend our hours, especially into the evening, I guarantee our numbers will go up. So being one of the smaller ones, we don't have quite the hours that other libraries have. But if we figure out a way to extend our hours, I guarantee I know a guy that can also kind of help get the word out that there's more access to that. So anytime the library wants to sit down with the school district, we can make that happen. So thank you.
Wayne, this is Bethany Griffith here. I think it was before your tenure on the board when this conversation started to look at the kind of rural renewal initiative, is to be able to look at specifically the locations like Spring Hill where we've got some limited hours, and to see if we could think outside the box in order to increase that. So I think we definitely would appreciate having an advocate in the community to help us kind of navigate some creative ways to do that between admin staff and the community to increase our services. And we've been looking at wanting to test that out somewhere like Spring Hill, and then see if we could expand throughout the entirety of our system to do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Bethany. We appreciate whatever you can do for us. So thank you. Fabian, you come down here again. I guarantee I can find you some of the best barbecue you've ever had. So any of you guys want to come down to Spring Hill, give me a heads up and we'll work something out.
Well, Wayne, thank you very much. And I was sort of prodding you there. I'm surprised it took you so long to jump in because and I'll be completely forthcoming on it. It did bother me because I drove all the way out there, and I make it sound like I'm going to, Cincinnati or something. But I drove out there and then they were closed, and so that's kind of a bummer. But like you, Wayne and David, I have not been a member of this body for very long, and so Bethany, thank you for bringing me up to speed a little bit on that RRI. And Sean, is this a trend that we would normally see, or is this an anomaly? When you see growth like that, and you see an area exploding, as Wayne described, the fastest growing district, is it normal that it would be slow for demand in the library?
Well, yes and no. Dr. Burke Wayne is absolutely right. Percentage-wise, it is absolutely the fastest growing. But in just sheer numbers, some of the other school districts are lower percentage and growth rate, but higher number. What I think is more important for us is really understanding what that community needs. And when we talk to them, which was increasing access, we need to create access not only to the physical building and the resources that are in there, but we also need to be able to enhance access to the internet for kids. So you come to the building and get this, but if we can broadcast Wi-Fi signal and offer this as a service that would be outside of the building, I think that's something that we're wanting to do. But when we get into the rural and our renewal initiative, that's when we really reach out to all the stakeholders in Spring Hill. And the number one is the school district. So I'm thrilled that Wayne, I think together we can do something really great for the community as a partnership, understanding what students need, what the adult need is. And I think in the back of my mind, some of the work that we did at Lenexa, which was creating a hold lobby, was really kind of a step or a test case for how do we offer that in the rural communities? How do we keep staffing costs low, but keep access to material and the facilities high? And so being able to have automating services or to have extended services is something that we're really interested in talking about that community with. I think it's a really exciting, Spring Hill and DeSoto are really exciting, and I think it was going to offer a great asset to the community. But I think it's just about, the study means, let's talk to the people that live there, find out what they want, what's top of mind, and then talk to them about what would you need the library to do? What kind of meeting room spaces? What kind of collection do you want? What kind of computer access do you need? All those types of things, and get a real picture of where the community is. And really, we're building this community for the next 30, 40 years. Let's also think about as you grow and be able to project that out a little.
Hey,
you very
Sean,
much, Sean.
Hey, Sean, this is David. If I kind of glanced at the study that you guys did about the whole planning process of building libraries, and isn't there pretty good guidelines as to when you add staffing and when you add another building based upon population and things like that? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely getting that right. We do it per 100,000 as far as a kind of a trend, and there isn't a firm standard.
Right.
We tend to size our libraries a little smaller because it helps to reduce cost. And so I think when we were talking about it was a 0.75 square feet per 1,000 in a region. And so when we're predicting out, but again, like with the Lenexa City Center, I think we talked to the city that initially when that opened, we had 15,000 people within a radius of a mile. And we could also see that the density from what they were doing, that would increase. And so that kind of comes into the equation when building a new library. Kind of like what schools do.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, schools are predicting, as far as when you need a new school or middle school based on what they're seeing. And so if you need to build a new middle school, you may need a certain number of years to build a new high school because that cadre of students is then going to move on. So sometimes, Gardner's a really great example. I think it had the largest, a couple of years ago, had the largest group of kids under 5. And it seemed that young families, affordable housing, great place to live. And young families came, they had kids, but then the school system has to adjust to this kind of little baby boom that happened in Gardner when they go and hit the school system. I think the same is true, in Spring Hill. You can just see it's a really great community to live in, and maybe it's more affordable than some of the other areas in the county. Great school system, also.
Okay, if there's no more discussion there, I'll go on to the final page of the slide presentation here and talk about holds during reopening. And I think this is where we see sort of a significant behavioral change. We've seen a 5% decrease in holds placed from the same period last year. But you can see in the next chart that the number of items that we've received in our branches to meet holds is higher than last year by 13%. And last month I speculated that this increase was potentially due to us catching up after having been closed, but it has persisted and it really been sustained past that initial wave of holds reaching patrons. And so now I'm going to change my speculation, and I think it's probably likely due to our patrons shifting practice from browsing our collection for materials to placing holds to receive their material. And this accounts for our circulation being down, but our holds rate only being down 5%. So our circulation is down by 30%. Our holds rate is only down 5%. We believe that's because people have shifted practice. So we'll continue to track these out, and if we begin, to see if we begin to level out compared to last year. So any other questions on this for me?
Adam and Sean and probably anybody else, Tricia, I really appreciate you putting together the stats. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit of a stats nerd, but seriously, I think it's great that you're looking at all these trends, trying to figure out, especially the staffing, using the data to figure out, where you need to go. So I kind of tip my hat to you guys on just looking at all this stuff. I know there's probably, 10 times more that we're not even seeing that you're looking at every month. So.
Well, and I'll say Adam, this is Tricia, Adam does a wonderful job, and his brain is wonderfully matched to this, because you do have to kind of speculate out and look at the really wide possibilities of what could be behind these statistics. And I think he comes at it with a really neutral look of like, it could be anything, good or bad, or something that we're missing completely. And he does a great job going and talking to different departments of what do you think's behind this, and what could have happened that we are not seeing? So it's really a feather in Adam's cap. He does a great job.
Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah, I would agree. Scott has shared some stuff. I'll go back to Spring Hill just to let you know that originally when we did the capital plan, Spring Hill, if we were to build a new one to meet that community need, would be around 20,000 square feet. Just remember, for many of the new board members, it wasn't prioritized by the BOCC to fund that, and so we didn't have the whole capital plan wasn't fully funded. So it would have been fully funded at I think about 1.12 mil, and we were funded at 0.75. So that's where, when we got that funding or partial funding, and it was great for the BOCC to do that, we realized that we had two choices. We had the choice to just work on what we had and go ahead and build in the highest priority areas, as we're seen by the wide group, the library board and stakeholders in the BOCC. We got alignment with that. We could go back and ask for the remaining portion to be funded, and depending whether the commission was up for that, or we could begin to start building up our reserves. And the reason why we started building up the reserves is because if we couldn't build a new building in Spring Hill or DeSoto, what we could do is we could enhance the service there with the existing building. And we could have funds for self-funding, very much how we did the central building upgrade, which we didn't have any capital funds to do that. That's where we're at. What the study showed was that that community really needs a 20,000 square foot library. We just cannot get funding or the BOCC to increase our mill rate in order to make that happen at this point. And they may do it in the future. Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to ask Scott to kind of talk us through the central staff space consolidation and then provide us with the overall timeline, and we'll see the update on where the rural and renewal initiative is occurring there. Scott?
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. I am here on behalf of the core team to give you an update on the central project first, and then I'll talk a little bit about our overall major capital projects timeline. Okay, Michaela, go ahead, please. So tonight I'll give you a brief update on design and share our proposed little central plan, talk about next steps, and finish up with a look at our timeline. So for a design update, we are nearing the end of the design development phase, which began in May. The project's core team continues to meet with representatives from each department and the admin team to refine our schematic design. You got to see an update on that last month. We're capturing more details and specifics, and to finalize placement of things like windows and door locations, look at materials, and then other general details. So for Little Central, what we're proposing here, if the board goes with that option, is I want to talk about a few of those parts tonight. So regarding the collection, we're planning to continue offering holds, pickup, and material book and material return. Our material return would come through a temporary exterior freestanding book drop, and we've used that method a few times in the past when we installed the new sorter over at Corinth, and then when we did I think that was there when we did the roof repair at Cedar Row. Also, high demand titles that currently get served up out of Central would go to other locations so that patrons could still get access to those. And the same with new materials. Those would still be coming in, and usually Central is the hub. And during construction, those would just go out to other spots so patrons could get a hold of them. And they'd also be available online through our web catalog for people to place holds on. Regarding PCs, we heard you guys last month when you talked about providing PC access, and I think that we found a pretty good plan. What we would do is use the Learning Lab for PC access, and we're working out the details on how that room would lay out currently if we go with that option, and what we'd be shooting for right now is around 10 PCs. Regarding the Makerspace, we are anticipating a lot of those maker services to move online as they are already starting to, including the concept of some maker hours and also online programming. And then lastly on that slide, we would continue to plan for, to continue to offer Wi-Fi, and then that bank of restrooms up front, and also the vending. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a look at how that lays out. So the main entrance is kind of right there in the middle on the bottom, and that would continue to function in this little central option. Restrooms and vending over there on the left. We would keep our main service point, and that's where the holds exist today, so we wouldn't need to update that. The current Learning Lab is what's shown as the public PCs area. And then also we would need some space for our branch folks to run the little central space out of, and that would be in the current Logan room temporarily. Okay, next slide, please. So a few next steps. We're seeing some really great concepts come for the finishes in the spaces of Central, centering on a nature or natural theme. And I'm really excited to see how those are going to continue to evolve in the next few weeks. We anticipate closing out this phase of design later in August. And then our last phase of design is the construction documents phase, which is really meant to conclude and finalize design and then to get a final set of documents ready for bidding. I'll talk a little bit about staff moves too. So we're really starting to dig into details regarding, I think Sean mentioned this up front, regarding which staff can go where. We're planning to move our non-public service staff, those that need to have a physical space, to a combination of Lackman, Antioch, and our support services building for construction or during construction. And then depending on the board's action later tonight, we may be working through finding temporary locations for our public service staff to work out of as well. We've started working through details like making sure that those folks have access to power and data and the equipment that they need. And a silver lining out of our recent months is we've discovered how to work pretty efficiently from home when we can. And I anticipate that some staff will continue to do that during construction. We're also considering having some, or discussing having some landing spots in some locations too for when in-person work by those remote folks is needed. Okay, and then the last thing on this slide, the library board has two items in front of it tonight for action. One is to consider closing the majority of Central for construction and opening a little central space. This would allow the library to finish construction quicker and also to see some cost savings to the project. And then the second item is related to amending the project budget to include some needed capital replacement plan work. The benefit there is that this money's already been allocated by the board for those repairs, and moving them up to this timeline would mean fewer closures for that work over the next few years. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm still showing two timelines, and once we hear from the board tonight, I'll drop that down to one, and that will be our timeline. Any questions that I can answer or take back to the team about the central renovation?
Hey, Scott, can you just remind, I think when I'm looking at my notes, if we did all in one, you would save, I think, what, 1.6 million? Does that sound right? Total?
I think, so I think that we would see some savings for the putting all the CRP things in now. And also we'd see some savings by having this work be done by the same construction manager.
And follow up, Dave, I don't know if you're still on the line. Is that on page 10? Is that you've got the scheduled replacement plan funding? Is that where that money is on page 10 of our reports?
So that's a good segue there. So there are CRP dollars that we have put into project funding. There was actions taken late last year to transition the CRP work over to the facilities department. And so what you're seeing there is there's an interfund transfer line down there of about 1.76 million. That was the remainder, for the most part, most of the remainder funds between the 2015 and 2019 projects went into a set of different project accounts that the facilities department manages for the library. So there's another set of capital projects that have been set up on the facilities side that now has that 1.76 million in funds for it. And then the 2020 CRP that was budgeted has been transferred into a facilities capital project. So there's like 3 capital projects over on the facilities side that does that CRP work. And I have a little question as to what we should be providing here in way of disclosure of those project accounts that are being managed by the facilities department, because it went from being capital projects that were set up under the library that are now over on the facilities side. And we get monthly updates from them and budget updates. So we have that information. I guess the question is would you guys as a board like to see that packaged and presented along with these reports?
I don't know if I need to see the total. I mean, it's fine either way, but I just want to make, I was just trying to figure out where it's accounted for since we've been saving, you know, I didn't know if that was in the report that we get now, so.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the transfer portion of part of those into the facilities for their capital projects, but there's a lot more money on those facilities projects that are over there than obviously the budget remaining that I'm showing out at the bottom, because that 33,000 is just for a few open POs that we have right now. So.
Let me ask the board, would you be interested in the next month or so of us presenting a report, particularly in the financial sections, that really has a focus on the capital, where that money's coming? We generally go into a much deeper dive with the budget committee on these types of things and how it's expended. But we can do a kind of a brief summary of where things are going. So that may be something that you might like to see.
I'd be good with it at some point, but
Okay.
I'll kind of defer to others. I think I'm probably a little bit more of a numbers guy than some of the other ones on the board, so I'll let them speak.
We can provide a high level of those project funds, how much money is in there, how much is being expended. So even when you get done with a Monticello or a Lenexa, and we're open and the building's running, there are still expenses that you work with the construction companies, and those go on for about a year after being in operation, and then that project actually gets closed out. And if there is any money, then that money then comes out of that project. And so we can share with you where we're at with those, and we can share with the funds for like the central, the CSSC. We can also share one with Antioch and where that's coming. And then we do go into some kind of detail on the budget, on the CIP process, predicting what project funds will be open and how those funds from different areas are going to be put into that project line in order to pay for that project. And so sometimes they come right out of the 0.75 mil, but sometimes they come in a combination of out of that mil and cash funded. And so each project's a little different on how we're paying it, but we can create a report that would just kind of paint a picture of how those funds are set up and where we're at today as a kind of a snapshot. And it give a 5-minute high level. And then if any of those are interesting, then we can go, we can take a deeper dive if the board would like.
Yeah, I think that's probably good. Just a 5-minute. I mean, it doesn't have to be done every month. That would be probably a little bit crazy, but certainly once a year is probably a good idea.
Okay, we'll work on that for you. Okay. So Scott, did you want to go and do you have the overall timeline that you want to share next?
I do, that'd be great. And there we go. So on the overall timeline, this is the same as what you saw last month. So no changes there. And I'm sorry, Michaela, if you'll go on to slide 2. Thanks. And then there was some earlier discussion about the Rural Renewal Initiative earlier. So you'll see where we're currently showing that on the timeline. Any questions from the board about what you see here? Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is Lackman. And so as Scott shared, we're going to have to use Lackman to house staff from Central that are going to be displaced because of the Central CSSC. When talking with the Board of County Commissioners, they asked us what we were doing with Lackman, and we shared with them the study that was still ongoing. They talked about selling the property, and we talked about that selling is definitely an opportunity, and that we needed the building to put staff in. What we have then talked a little about was if staff are occupying that building for a year, would it be possible, and we're closing the bookstore at Central, would it make sense for a proof of concept to go ahead and offer that space, the front side of that building, to the Friends as a bookstore? And what we have asked Georgia and Scott to do is to look at the minimum pricing for that to occur, and they're in the process of doing that. What I can report is that we have done got an estimate for that building and its worth from that work has been completed, and then the board had also asked us to do comparables to look at what it would cost to rent space. All of that is going to be brought back to you at the next board meeting in September. And then in October, what we're planning to do is to see where, if the board is ready to make a decision, if the board is ready to go ahead and have enough information to say, we would like you to put this building on the market, or we would think that for this amount of money, the Friends could occupy this building for a year and do a kind of a test case of what it would look like to have 14,000 square foot space. Are they going to see revenue increase? Is that going to be something that the community wants? And so it's a kind of a unique opportunity. Are there any questions on Lackman? Okay. I'm going to move on to the reopening team and have Jen and Nancy give the next report.
Sorry, finding mute. So good evening, everyone. Jennifer Munkin here for the Associate Director for Branch Services. Michaela, you can go to the next slide. Tonight, we're going to be talking about staffing, our meeting and study room and conference rooms, and our curbside Holtz pickup service. So I'll be providing the first two things, and then Michelle Olson will be our circulation manager. We'll talk about this exciting new service of our curbside pickup. Michaela, you can go to the next slide. So staffing. We have good news in that we received approval to post some vacant positions. As you can see, this includes adult services positions, youth services positions, and clerks. If we still have vacancies after October 31st, we will have to go back to the exceptions committee to seek permission again. Until then, we have the ability to post any vacant position that can become open in these three areas. Our first round of postings will happen the week of August 23rd. Currently, we have approximately 15 vacancies to fill in these three areas. We will also be going back to the committee to ask for permission to post some additional support positions in the near future. We have taken this time in the organization to really reflect on what positions we need, thinking about making the best use of our positions, and looking at our long-term goals for the organization. To that end, we are purposefully leaving some positions vacant. We sought permission to fulfill positions that will help us restore our hours. We are trying to take advantage of this unique time to make our organization better. In addition, we have extended some hours to an online service that we offer. It's called Answers. And this is where staff answer questions that have been emailed to us. And we have added 4 hours on Fridays from 10 to 2 to help with the backlog of questions that the staff staffing that service on Saturdays has. Michaela, you can go to the next slide. So we still do have several people who are on approved COVID leave and are working at home or not working at all. We have also received several resignations in the last month. Many are due to childcare issues or related to concerns around COVID. Staffing levels are still inadequate to cover all of our service points and to restore our pre-COVID hours. At this time, we will not be able to recommend adding staff hours back, or I'm sorry, building hours back due to several staff resignations and some staff still working at home. We are working really closely with HR to be fair and consistent with our staff. And so looking at when we can no longer grant them to be able to work at home, things to that nature. Okay, Michaela, you can go to the next slide. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about today is meeting rooms and study rooms and conference rooms. Per your request last month, we did ask a team to look at the feasibility of opening meeting rooms or study rooms sooner than the end of the year. Here you will see the findings and our recommendation. The options on the market to add an air purification system in these spaces are not COVID-19 rated as of yet, and their availability is extremely limited. We have limited cleaning supplies and limited staff available to clean rooms before and after each of these high-risk spaces. Most libraries are not offering rooms at all because the risks are far too high. Olathe is testing some cleaning equipment, but stepped back from opening their meeting spaces to the public. The only library in the Midwest that we can find that's offering any meeting spaces at this time is Topeka. The next slide, please, Michaela. With the exception of a few rooms at Central, most of our meeting and study rooms are already in use for quarantine and storage. Our meeting and study rooms are not designed with cross ventilation and for now depend only on the HVAC filtration system for air quality. Additional options to increase outside airflow would be costly to implement and increase utility expenditures with minimal documentable improvements to the air quality. Finally, in the last 6 weeks, we have only had a handful of requests from the public to use our spaces, so the demand is not super high right now. Our recommendation is that we not open our meeting spaces to the public at this time. We are not ready to uncover or unwrap our building furniture or tables and chairs yet. We feel this step would come before offering meeting space to the public. We have a responsibility to our patrons and to our staff to keep them safe. As cases continue to rise in the area rather than decline, it is our belief that this would not be the responsible thing to do at this time. We will keep looking at it and evaluating the situation and hope that technologies and supplies will catch up with our current needs. Before I turn it over to Michelle to talk about the curbside, I wanted to give you all a chance to ask questions. Is there any questions I can answer for you at this time?
Hey, Jennifer, David here. One, thank you for that report. Thank you for looking into it. I think that was my question. So what is, as far as unwrapping the tables, what is have you got when would we be doing that? Is that is there something that you have in mind that, if we met these goals or phases that we'd be opening up? Yeah, I agree. That seems like that would be the first step, but we still want to do it responsibly and stuff.
Yeah, I can talk a little about that. So we looked at positivity rate in the county. We're running, last time I checked, about 10.7%. Where we really need to drive it down to is about 2%. If we get down to 2%, then I think we're in a really good position to open and make seating available and open our meeting rooms again. And so we've been talking about that in admin. And I'm not saying 2% is the magic number. It could be 3%, but it's going to be right around there. And listening to Dr. Ariola talk today we're still seeing, though it's a fall, we're looking at rates fall. The worst week I think we had, going back, 810, I think in the last 6 weeks, new cases. I think it's fallen down to 629, but he needs, in his recommendation, we need as a county to continue to drive that down. Nationally, I think, and this is not necessarily related to Johnson County, but Kansas City was one of, in the top 10 as a hot spot for contagious levels. So it's still something I think we're struggling with in the region. But that's kind of, we've been talking about with admin, that's kind of where we would need it to be able to safely open that. And I think if we see compliance as far as washing hands, wearing a mask, socially distancing, I think this is possible. It just takes the entire community to do this.
Thank you.
Are there other questions you have regarding these two pieces of my presentation? All right, if not, I'll turn it over to Michelle Olson to talk to you about curbside pickup. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, I'm Michelle Olson. I'm the circulation manager here at the library, and I'm excited to finally talk to you all about our curbside bolt pickup launch. We began piloting this initiative at our Leawood Pioneer Library on July the 27th, and we are seeing good usage rates as are indicated here. This was the first week of the launch. The second week, last week, we saw similar numbers. We've seen a slight decline this week, but we're still excited, and patrons are excited to have this start. So to walk you through the process, curbside is something that you're seeing at many retail locations and other libraries in the metro. And our process is very similar. Our patrons are notified when they have a hold available for pickup at our Leawood Library. They then drive to the library, park in the indicated stall, will text hold to the number provided, and staff inside receive that message saying there's a patron outside ready for holds pickup. Our staff will get the library card number from the patron and their name and car information, and then staff will go pull those holds, check them out to the patron, bag them, and then deliver them curbside at our Leawood Library. You can see Jackie Allen here, one of our very experienced and seasoned clerks at Leawood delivering those holds curbside. starting on the 27th, then anyone who's checked out materials from Leawood Library has been sent a survey regarding the holds pickup service that we're providing, even those who may not have used it, to gather feedback from our patrons. And this information has been really wonderful in terms of helping us to streamline our processes and improve our patron service, which is really exciting. I also want to say here that Leawood staff has been wonderful in terms of being the pilot location for this. They have experienced clerks. They have clerks who have worked our drive-through locations. So their experience in providing these contactless services here through Curbside have been invaluable in improving the service. Michaela, you can hit the next slide. So the hours of Curbside are available during our normal library hours of operation. And the exciting thing is we are adding and expanding Curbside service to both Gardner and Cedar Row in the coming weeks, which we're really excited. And with these additions of Curbside plus our drive-through locations, we're providing more contactless or hands-free options for patrons who don't necessarily want to enter into our buildings. And we are really hitting all of the communities within the county. So it was really important for us to look at all of these locations and be able to provide hands-free contactless service everywhere within the county, or reasonably within the county. And that's my update on Curbside. Does anyone have any questions about this new service with JCL?
Has there been a increase in checking out from Leawood? Or do you think people are just not going outside, or do you think you've actually had an increase in people that maybe weren't coming to the library at all? Or do you know yet?
I'm not sure we know those exact trends. The survey has indicated that even patrons, we have patrons that would like to step inside the building for browsing material and looking for material or picking up their holds. But we've had repeat customers, which we're really excited by, people who have used the service more than once, even though it's only been going for 2.5 weeks. And we're seeing a variety of individuals utilizing it. So we're excited to see the trends. And again, it's really early in the process, but we're really looking forward to seeing how this service picks up at JCL.
Thank you, Michelle. Was there, just before Michelle goes, did anyone else have any other questions for her? I do want to say thank you to your team and everyone that's worked on the Curbside. It's introducing a new service line with reduced staff. And just anecdotally, you know, hearing people that have had mobility issues and parents that didn't want, on a hot day, did not want to get out of the car with their kids. I think this is going to be just something that the community loves. And from a fiscal standpoint, it is much cheaper to offer curbside service than it is to install a drive-through window or a drive-through lane and maintain that. So again, we can't offer drive-throughs at every location, but I think this is a great creative solution. You guys moved really quickly on it. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you, Sean.
So the next up is Hope Harms, who's going to be talking to us about some of the digital content we have coming.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Sean, for having me and the board. It's good to be back. Glad to have an opportunity to share a few more bright spots with you about our collection. This time I wanted to share with you some information about our streaming video collection. This is something that our patrons have been requesting. They've been asking for additional streaming video content for quite some time. And over the course of a few years, with a lot of discussions with vendors, trying to reach some favorable pricing models and using that opportunity as well to shift where we were allocating some of our budget within the collection, we're really thrilled that we've been able to add some new services in streaming video, and there's really an additional treasure trove of content that we're bringing to our community. So we can hop to the next slide, and you'll get to see there are 3 different collections specifically that I wanted to highlight for you today that have been a lot of fun in seeing activity grow that we were launched. And so in 2019, one of the collections that we brought was Acorn TV, brought that in December. And this features television shows and films from Britain, Ireland, Australia, and beyond. Some familiar names you might hear would be Poirot, Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, Agatha Raisin, Doc Martin. This service lets you check out a pass for 7 days of unlimited streaming through Acorn TV, and patrons can come back and check out another pass when their pass expires. And in addition to being able to watch it on the web, you can also take advantage of Acorn's suite of apps that they offer for smart devices, smart TVs, Roku, Fire Stick. You can Chromecast it. I will say one of my personal experiences, I was looking for a documentary series that I did not have on my personal household subscription channels, and I was excited I could check it out through Acorn with my library card. So highly recommend that. We also in December launched Canopy, and Canopy has a really strong curated collection of a wide variety of content, a lot of indie films, film festival favorites, documentaries, world cinema. Names you might recognize would be like Ken Burns documentaries or a selection of Criterion films, a lot of good PBS content as well. So you'll find actors from Charlie Chaplin to John Wayne and beyond in this collection. In order to access the collection, patrons get 10 play credits per month that they can redeem, and then there are also some additional collections that are credit free, and some of those include the Great Courses series. So especially if you're getting into back to school mindset and thinking about fall, if you want to try your hand at maybe some Russian history or art of cooking, maybe some yoga, you can dive in. You want to test your economic skills, you can do that with Great Courses, and that won't consume any of your play credits. There's also a whole portal dedicated just for kids. And so it's kid curated content, whether it's for entertainment or storybook classics or language learning, education. These are a lot of fun to dive into. So great for families as well. The third collection is still fairly new to our suite. And this is from the UK, our National Theatre Collection. And these are recordings of productions from the National Theatre Company in the UK. And these aren't recordings that you think of like school play, your mom is holding up a camcorder or smartphone and pointing at the stage. These are really sophisticated high-tech recordings that are very engaging, very strong audiovisual production from amazing actors. I know the one that I keep hearing people talk about is they see Benedict Cumberbatch in the Frankenstein production. There are 2 different productions with him. So you can find things like that, like Macbeth, Small Island, Streetcar Named Desire. This is a smaller collection. It has 30 productions. And the real icing on the cake for these is this database actually comes with archival material for some of the shows. So if you wanted to see costume designs from Frankenstein or some script prompts, you can actually go through that archival material after watching the production. So it's taken off pretty well. If we can move to the next slide, you can see some of our initial statistics. This is one case where our public was so glad to have the library content when COVID hit, because you can see how our numbers jumped dramatically. Here you're seeing Acorn TV and Canopy services. I actually did just get some recent data. UK National Theatre is still pretty new for us. So I finally got some of that data from our vendor, and we've already had 200 plays in that, and that's a pretty small collection, so it's great use of that. But it's really taken off. This is a weekly look at how many video plays we've had in each of those services. It's been very well received. On average, we're getting about 1,000 views per week from Acorn TV and about over 900 views per week in Canopy. I'd be happy to take any questions you have about these services.
Bethany here. Yay for National Theater. I am so excited about that. And everybody should definitely watch Benedict Cumberbatch in Frankenstein. Johnny Lee Miller is in the other one, and they take
Yes.
turns. Who is Dr. Frankenstein and who is the monster, which makes it especially dramatic if you are a theater nerd like I am, or you just like looking at either Benedict Cumberbatch's face or Johnny Lee Miller's, also a nice touch. There are some fantastic, fantastic plays, though, so I highly recommend it. I've been watching National Theater Live as long as they've been doing it at movie theaters. And they curate their collection, so they kind of change stuff. They have a huge, huge backlog of stuff, so I'm hoping that they'll start sharing some other ones. I just saw James McAvoy in Cyrano de Bergerac, which was absolutely phenomenal. So if movie theaters ever open up again, check out the AMC because they also do their brand new stuff as well. And so it is a super awesome product. So I am very excited. And no, Trisha, I did not watch it 200 times. Maybe 100.
Thanks, Bethany. I think it was in the news today that AMC is doing initially, it's planning by the end of, is it end of August to do a certain number, I think it was 100, and then opening all of their AMCs by the end of the month, from what I remember, or it could have been mid-September, but AMC is coming back and has made changes. So if you want to pay for it, go to AMC. If you want to get it for free, try it out, use the library.
So cool, yay.
So it's that time of year again for us to think about the annual library board retreat. We've normally done this in October or November, and I thought it might be useful to have a discussion about that, and particularly this year. Amy, did you want to form a committee, or did you want that I could talk with about this, or other general thoughts about how to do the retreat, in the sense of, would you prefer a retreat in person, or would you want to do it digitally, and follow the same formats that we have before?
Well,
Then,
could Michaela send out a survey and see what people think, and then we can go from there? Would that be all right?
That would be great. And I just want to double check, and again, because it's been a peculiar year, did the board want to have a retreat this year? I guess I'd need to kind of ask that question first.
Well, I think we need a retreat.
Yeah, I think we have to have one. I can't imagine us not being able to do our business without that.
Okay, I agree. I just wanted to at least put it out there as a question. The other piece for us, just so I can get a general feel, would the board prefer to do this in person with social distancing and setting up a room like maybe we've done our board meetings previously in Carmack, or would, at least for the planning stage, if we have this large outbreak, we can always go, we can come up with a plan B, but Amy, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, if we have it in October, I think we could do the setup like we did in Carmack.
I would rather wait if we had to and be able to do it in person. That 4 hours would be a really long time to have a headset squishing my brain. So I would personally rather, if we had to wait until it was a slightly different time, would be my personal preference, so that we can meet in person. Even if we have to social distance, being in the room where it happens would be better for everyone, I think.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree. This is Brandy.
This is Wayne. I agree.
Okay. And Donna?
I'm here. I agree. I think we can talk better in person instead of waiting for interruptions, or if we're going to interrupt someone or not on the screen. So yeah, I think in person would be a lot better.
Okay. So what we'll do is kind of send out a scheduling poll, like a doodle poll, figure out times, look at schedule, and I'll work with Amy and Bethany on looking at past years, and I'll create a an agenda, a draft agenda for them to look at, and then maybe reach out with a third party to do the facilitation that we've done and go forward there. And just to have continuity going forward, and then we can bring that and get the entire board to vet it and make sure that the topics are being covered. And we're also, as soon as we finish one budget year, Wayne, you know this, and anyone who does budgets, we immediately start working on the next budget. And so the library budget subcommittee scheduling. So again, same types of questions. It's a smaller group, but we need to have 3 people from the board on that committee. And would you prefer that was done in person, or do you think with the committee work that could be done virtually?
Is that start in September? September, October, November?
It starts in September, October, and I think December. On policy, those I believe are the dates. David, is that, correct me if I'm wrong on that?
And I think we have it starting in October,
Okay.
based on that agenda you had sent out to me at tentative one a couple weeks ago. So I think it's October, November, December, and then we may have something early next year.
Yep, there are 4 meetings. I think some years they've been September and some years they've been October, depending on what the budget. I'm going to go ahead and schedule them for October, November, December. And Amy, did you need time to assign people to that committee from the board?
Well, isn't it?
I think it's officers, isn't it?
It's office.
I thought so. I thought it would be Bethany, me, and Donna.
Okay. I just wanted to check on that.
And for the meetings, if we could have them late afternoon.
Okay.
Be good for me. Like
And
2 or 3.
Okay, am I assuming in person?
That would be my preference if we could, even if because Carmack's not open, if we could meet in Carmack and just be socially distanced instead of Sunflower, that would get us in the room together, but would afford distance for.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
That.
Okay. And Donna, are you comfortable with that?
Yep, that works for me.
Okay. Yeah, if we can, that'll work out well. And we'll go ahead and start doing those schedules. What I'm hearing is late afternoon, starting in October, and we'll schedule Carmack. And that concludes the County Librarians report.
All right, thank you, Sean. Next, we have the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Wayne, I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second? Anybody?
Brandy Butcher, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Next is old business. Consideration of amending the CSSC project authorization to include needed CRP work. I believe that's on page 46 in our packet.
Absolutely. So here we're considering approving 2 recommendations. The first one is to amend the CSSC project and to authorize the inclusion of the CRP work. You as a board have authorized both the CSSC and the CRP. What we're just looking for is to combine those into one project. There's 2 funds, put them into one time frame, and that way we get the work done at the fastest period at the lowest cost. And so that would be the first motion on the suggested motion. And then the next thing after you've done that is to bring temporary closure of the central library for the duration of the construction, except space for the little central library. So there'll be limited on-site service. Do you have any questions or discussions, say, on the first issue, which is the central CSSC consolidating with the CRP work?
I think it would be best personally if they did it all together to minimize closing down or limiting service later after it was over.
The
I
most
agree.
sensible, yeah.
I agree, and I was happy with Scott's explanation.
If there's no more discussion on that, do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Can I do them both at the same time or just one at a time?
Let's do one at a time.
All right. I move to approve amending the CSSC total project authorization to include the needed CRP work in an amount not to exceed $11,107,000 with the intent to use a combination of existing project funds, existing CRP funds, public building commission debt, and library reserves.
Second, Bethany Griffith.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. So next would need a motion on the approval of the temporary closure of the Central Resource Library.
I move to approve the temporary, do you want a motion now or you want to discuss it?
Go ahead.
Motion. I move to approve the temporary closure of the Central Resource Library for the duration of the construction, accepting space to allow the limited on-site service.
Do I have a second?
Brandy Butcher, second.
Any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have new business. Consideration of approval of the MOU between Johnson County Library and the Surveillance Studies Research Center at the University of Kansas on page 48.
So this comes from a conversation from one of the professors from KU that reached out to me personally and said that they were doing a study and had got national or federal money to do the study, and they'd done it over a number of years, but wanted to continue the study at a larger library system. And this has basically got to do with Surveillance Studies Research Center at the University of Kansas, looking at safeguarding and enhancing the experience of public internet users. And so they wanted to come in and interview and talk with patrons, but also produce a report. Again, we think that our work with KU and doing these types of studies not only benefit us, but also position the library as kind of a leader on how we offer services. So they'll be sending graduate students to kind of interview the public. It's the preservation of all patron information. This is not mandatory. Patrons will be invited to do this and can refuse. Again, roughly 10 hours per week per location. And it is my recommendation that we would enter into this MOU with the University of Kansas and the Surveillance Studies Research Center.
Any questions or comments?
How will they do that with the social distancing, and where would they do it at? Because they couldn't go into a meeting room.
No, so originally we had this this conversation started in February, and we were like, you know, we're on board. Let's get the documents and everything lined up. And then COVID hit, and what this might actually be done is remotely, like a Zoom conference. So they're working. They want to keep their graduate students and their PhD students safe, and they also want to keep the people that they're interviewing safe. And so there'll be a whole protocol that we will put in place to do that, and it may be through teleconferencing. There may be a way to ask those questions or surveys. But what we're basically saying is we're going to partner with you so you can do that, can do the study here.
Any more questions for Sean? Do I have a motion?
Fabian Shepherd, I move to approve the MOU between Johnson County Library and the Surveillance Studies Research Center at University of Kansas.
Wayne Burke, second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before?
I have nothing. I think this concludes.
All right, well then I guess I just need one last motion from somebody.
Fabian Shepherd, I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the staff and
Thank you.
everybody for all your hard work.